As always, I am apologizing for the leaf blowers outside. If you hear it in the audio, I can't control that. That's my bad. If you don't hear it in the audio, then that's good, because it means that I'm doing my job in making sure that all the background noise is drowned out to the best of my capabilities. Either way, today we are going over some notes made by Elliotte Friedman on today's edition of the 32 Thoughts podcast. Now, there actually were a few really big ideas that were tossed out there on the show. And instead of, breaking it up into individual videos, what I wanted to do was combine these two ideas into one and just kind of get some discussion going, because we got two players on the chopping block today from two of my favorite teams in the NHL and new teams that they have been linked to. Now, starting out with the Eastern conversation, let's go over to the Montreal Canadiens, because when it comes to center Sean Monahan, we do have some updates from Friedman as to where he's going to go, or where Friedman thinks Monahan is going to go. Take a look at this tweet right here. I think the Canadiens are going to trade him. I do. I think the option would potentially be open for him to go back to the Habs next season as well. The Rangers make a lot of sense for me for him, Friedman says on the pod. He also says this: the whole Jeff Gorton and Rangers dynamic, let's just say they're not on each other's Christmas card list. Let's just go with it. So that complicates the deal there, but that's the kind of player they're going to be looking for. So, let's start out with that, shall we? Sean Monahan getting traded over to the New York Rangers. This is not a surprising idea, mostly because of the news that we had talked about yesterday, that Rangers forward Filip Chytil would be placed on the LTIR for the end of the year, and that he won't resume playing hockey until the earliest 24-25. So, his departure from the lineup, he was already out for a while, so it's not like this is anything new. But because Filip Chytil has now been confirmed to not playing for the rest of the year, it opens the door up to a conversation on potential centers. Extra guys who could help out this team down the middle. And the interesting thing is, I feel like for a lot of Rangers fans, because of the recent slump they've gone over the past little while, you're starting to see more cracks in the armor as to how this team proceeds with the line it already has. Like, I'm seeing a lot of Rangers fans going out there and calling out Mika Zibanejad for his lack of 5v5 production and his pace. The other centers on the team right now include Vinny Trocheck, Brodzinski, and Barclay Goodrow. So when it comes to this team, you could very well say that the second-line center need has been there for a while, and if Sean Monahan is the guy to get it done, then you probably, hopefully, get that done sooner than later to get your team out of this current slump. Now, depending on the price, which I think, everybody's talking about whether or not Monahan would be worth a first-round pick, a second first-round pick, and how there might be some sort of a prospect or something attached to it. The Rangers, if they really wanted to go all in, they may be able to sacrifice one of their younger pieces, because the Rangers have actually had a few really nice names over the past few years. Brennan Othmann was their first-round guy in 2021. They didn't have a first-round guy in 2022, but they did get Adam Zakora in the second round. Gabe Perreault is their first-round guy from 2023, whom I happen to like a lot. He's a very good player in the NCAA right now. So there are some good, talented names that would make sense as well, but all in all, this is just one of these ideas where if you wanted to say the Rangers wanted to address a need, Monahan is like the first guy there on the list. And it's been that way for a while. We have been making videos about Monahan and the New York Rangers in particular, spanning back to like a month and a half ago, so this is not really new, all things considered, but at the end of the day, it is noteworthy that Friedman is bringing it up on the podcast once again and saying, yeah, I feel like this is the fit. I feel like this is where he's going to go. And for the Rangers, because of the lack of Filip Chytil, you could say it's more destined than ever to go out there and make this trade for Monahan. Now, this is only one of the two guys that I wanted to talk about in this particular video, highlighting Elliotte Friedman quotes. The second one is Andrei Kuzmenko of the Vancouver Canucks, because we had ourselves a few extra tidbits regarding him also shared on the show. Let's head over onto NHL Watcher's Twitter, because he has yet another tweet focusing on these comments. He says this regarding Kuzmenko: Chicago. That's a team, if I was them, I'd be looking at Kuzmenko. Jeff Merrick then says, I always think Kuzmenko, if they're going to move him off in Vancouver, that he's going to end up with the Islanders. I thought Nashville for a while, but Chicago? They can't score, Friedman said. Now, after Friedman made this 32 Thoughts podcast hit, he then made an appearance on Donnie and Dolly later in the day, so maybe like 2 hours ago from now. There, Rick Dhaliwal and the crew asked Friedman again about the Kuzmenko Chicago stuff, and this is what he said. The Blackhawks need scoring, and they have cap space. The Canucks are also trying to free up cap space. Chicago has looked into Kuzmenko. They don't want term, and Kuzmenko has just 1 year left after this season. He also said this, that since I brought up Andrei Kuzmenko's name on the podcast this morning to Chicago, I've had multiple people contact me and say that there is more to this. So, Andrei Kuzmenko, Chicago? Is that really the thing here? Is that the fit that Friedman is seeing as most likely? Well, it's apparently so that that's the case. Let's talk about the Chicago Blackhawks a little bit, because they need scoring. They need guys who could step into the lineup and actually produce at a fairly consistent rate. Right now, the only guys who have a whole bunch of production are not playing, like Connor Bedard with 33 points in 39 games played. Other than Bedard, you've got Jason Dickinson, who's second on the team in points. He's got 25 in 50 games, so half a point a game guy. Philip Kurashev is at 24 points in 43 games. Nick Foligno is injured again? 18 points, 43 games played. There are not a lot of guys who are getting points on this team, but the unfortunate part about it is Andrei Kuzmenko hasn't really been too hot either, so it's not really like him going to Chicago is gonna make him all of a sudden better. If anything, I wouldn't be surprised if Kuzmenko goes over to a team like the Blackhawks and gets worse. Like, he's on pace for 37 points right now, already struggling with his production, but he's playing with some of the best players in the league. What more if he's on Chicago? Like, if Bedard comes back and you wanted to force a Bedard-Kuzmenko connection, I mean, Kuzmenko can play with top-tier players. We saw that last year when he had 74 points. Him playing with Elias Pettersson was fantastic. What a dynamite combo there. But this season, a lot of that confidence has shriveled up, and it's not been good for Kuzmenko and the way he's able to convert on his chances and how he moves around in the offensive zone. I'm not too sure if a trade to Chicago is going to give him the mental activation to completely go back to the form that he was last year, especially since all his teammates are going to be worse. Now, there is the argument to be had, okay, maybe because they're worse, maybe because Kuzmenko has expectations of being the top guy, maybe because out of all the players on the team, aside Taylor Hall, who isn't even on the team anymore, he's on the IR, you could very well say that Kuzmenko has had the best NHL season out of everybody who is on this squad. Like, tell me a season where Jason Dickinson was more productive than Andrei Kuzmenko's 74 points last year. Tell me a season where Ryan Donato, or Taylor Radish, or Boris Kachuk were more productive than Kuzmenko. You can't tell me because there hasn't been one. Out of all the players on the Blackhawks roster right now, Andrei Kuzmenko has been the best, and he has had the highest peak. So, all of a sudden, if you wanted to say there's some sort of a leadership type thing there, a taking over the reins because there's nobody else to do the job of scoring goals type of thing there, then maybe it makes sense. I mean, the Chicago Blackhawks getting a guy like Kuzmenko would bolster up their team, but at the end of the day, if you're trading away Kuzmenko, everybody here in Vancouver is saying that you kind of have to replace him with another top six forward. And if you wanted to make this trade, I mean, what, you're going to lose out on Kuzmenko for a prospect or something, and all of a sudden there's a glaring hole in the top six of this Vancouver Canucks team? Like, there would need to be some sort of a plan, I feel, to make it work where you get Kuzmenko out and you bring another top six forward in. And for Chicago, they just don't really have too many top six forwards that I think would move the needle as much or more than Andrei Kuzmenko. So you gotta ask whether or not it's really worth it to make this trade. Not unless the Blackhawks are like, okay, here's a good defensive prospect who is young, let's say a Kevin Korchinski or something, just tossing a name out there, and then the Canucks immediately flip him to some other team for a cheaper, better top six forward option that can help the team right now. Like, there would need to be some 3D chess going on here to make it work, but at the end of the day, I mean, Friedman went out there and talked about it, which is why we're discussing it here on the show as well. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about these two ideas. Sean Monahan getting traded to the Rangers and Andrei Kuzmenko being linked to the Chicago Blackhawks. If you're a fan of any of these four teams, what are your thoughts on these players heading over to your squads or getting traded from your squads? And what do you think the trade price should be? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.